Well, thank you very much, Murray, and excuse me, but my voice is not particularly good. I've had a bug for about 3 weeks and very stupidly didn't go to my bed 3 weeks ago to shake it off, and it's now beating me, I think, rather than me beating it. And you might have noticed my wife was giving me a row this morning because I haven't shaved for a couple of days. And she says, that's not very good, you should shave. But I'm actually going to very lazily try to raise some money in the December bowel cancer, for the bowel cancer people. And that's tomorrow, and I thought, I was feeling sorry myself, lying around yesterday. I didn't shave, I was coughing and spluttering, and I woke up this morning and I thought, well, I've got 2 days growth, so that's a good start to the December beard. So I'm cheating slightly by starting slightly earlier than others maybe, but I hope in about 4 weeks' time I'll have a magnificent beard just like Jamie's one. So apologies for my the way I look. Land is a national asset, there's no doubt about that. And land has to be used, in my opinion, for the common good, as has been said already today, and in the public interest. But it's how you define that and how you get to the root of that that is the real issue. Land reform, the bill that's going through the Parliament at the moment, I think is probably the most important issue the Scottish Parliament has dealt with for a long time, maybe ever. And it is something we have to look at very, very carefully. Now, all of society, again as has been said, must benefit from the use of land. Without land, none of us would be here. We'd have no food, we'd have no sustenance, we'd have nowhere to live. So the land is absolutely crucial to our existence, as has been said already this morning. Now, much of the land, in the Highlands in particular, is still used for hunting, shooting and fishing, and Jamie mentioned about hunting earlier on as being something, and I noted it down, was a virtue in biblical terms, hunting for game. But I want to just read you a little bit about what Neil Gunn had to say about the rights of the people in relation to hunting, shooting and fishing in his novel Butcher's Broom. The men also went hunting the hill for deer and the river for salmon, and so ancient had been their gaming rights that no new laws or restrictions in favour of landlord or lessee could ever convict them in their own minds of poaching. And if poaching it must be called, then so much the greater the zest in its pursuit. So that was the mindset of people back then, according to Neil Gunn. And again, in Butcher's Broom, I would like to just read a little bit about what the Duke of Sutherland, according to Gunn, had to say about, when talking to his wife, this is a conversation between him and his wife, about his improvements, in inverted commas, and the clearance of the people from their disturbed lands. And I think it's interesting to hear what Gunn had to say about this in relation to the Marquess. It really comes to this, concluded his lordship, that what benefits the landlord benefits the nation. The greater his rent from the land, the greater the output from the land. For no man can pay a high rent who is not himself receiving a high return for his labours. Consistent with that fundamental fact, every good landlord will act as humanely as possible. I admit that what has been said by some of your Gaelic enthusiasts has sometimes irritated me. A landlord must have absolute power over tenancy arrangements on his own land. If you cannot, within the law, do what you like with your own, the whole basis of our state is dissolved. I simply will brook no interference in the slightest degree with my absolute ownership of my own lands. Now, I think there are still some people in Scotland today, some dinosaurs, who actually believe that that is how these things should be looked at. But it's not the way I think that any of us should be looking at the land issue in a modern Scotland. The law which allowed the clan chiefs, if you go back to the 1800s and earlier, to claim their people's land, because the land belonged to them all, and the chief, whoever, male or female, was there in stewardship along with their clan, their family. That's what clan means in Gaelic. Those who took those lands to themselves, legally, of course, but of course the laws in these days, as is often the case now, are made by rich and powerful people. And they often benefit the rich and powerful people. But what politicians have to do is ensure fairness and equity and the common good. And that's what the Scottish Parliament must do when it's looking at land reform, as we are just now, and as we will go on to look at the bill as it gets through, hopefully stage 1, quite soon. There are obviously all sorts of legal matters which relate to this, and the European Convention on Human Rights is a very, very powerful protector of the rights to enjoy your own land. And many landlords have already told the committee, the Rural Affairs, Climate Change and Environment Committee, that if any of this stuff that we've got in this bill goes through, that there will be a huge lawsuit against the Scottish Government, and the Scottish Government will have to compensate landowners to the tune of billions and billions of pounds. Sounds a wee bit like bullying to me and threatening behaviour, which doesn't help the debate, in my opinion. But you don't just have ECHR. You also have the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. You have the United Nations Voluntary Guidelines on Responsible Governance of Tenure of Land, Fisheries and Forests in the context of national food security. And these things have to be looked at as well. How am I doing for time?
7 minutes.
7, good. Now, Hector Morrison and Jamie Grant have also very helpfully already laid out a number of things for us. They're right. The Lord created the land. The land is finite. We have a job to steward it, to use it, to produce food, to give ourselves homes, and for development. And what I would like to do now is just very quickly, as I round off, touch on one or two of the issues in the Land Reform Bill, which is going through Parliament, which the committee I'm on has been looking at very, very carefully. Indeed, our Stage 1 report will be published Friday. So, if you get out there, get a copy. It's quite a solid document. I think you'll find it will be very, very interesting. These issues are complex, very, very complex, and there are no easy answers to any of this. But the fundamental thing that the Land Reform Bill that's going through just now, apart from a huge chunk of it, 40% of it, which is dealing with agricultural holdings, with tenant issues and so on, the rest is dealing with other land issues. But the main things that come out of it, in my view, is that there's going to be a land commission created, with 6 commissioners on that land commission, of which one will be a dedicated tenant farming commissioner. And the other thing that will happen is that we'll have proper registration of who owns the land. And more importantly, who the beneficiaries of the use of that land are. And I believe those two things, those two pillars, will help to form a foundation to allow us to move forward on land reform issues in Scotland. There's an awful lot of work to do in relation to this. No one bill is ever going to deal with it and sort it at one go. But once you create this foundation, once you have a land commission who has a duty, or which will have a duty, to continually look at land matters, week on week, month on month, year on year, we can pick up the hoary chestnuts, the difficult issues, and get them dealt with on an ongoing basis. Instead of tackling land forum every 10, 15 or 20 years when a new bill gets thrown in to pick up a different issue. So there's going to be continual monitoring of how land is used, and all will be able to be involved in that. The land commissioners, one of the things which I'm very keen on is that one of these commissioners should have Gaelic. Now some people might say, why? Why Gaelic? Well, there's a precedent. The land court must have a Gaelic speaker on it, and the Crofting Commission must have a Gaelic speaker on it. And the issue is about understanding the Gaelbum, the Highlands and Islands, that have got a particular place in relation to land in Scotland. And I would just pose a wee question to you. How effective do you think a land commission with 6 merchant bankers from London on it would be, compared to a land commission with 6 Gaelic-speaking crofters from Sutherland or Skye? Compare the two and think to yourself, which one would you rather see running it? And there may be different views in this room, of course, on that. So control of land, who owns the land, who benefits from the land. People do have a right to know who owns the land around them. If communities want to develop housing or other community developments, they need to be able to get someone to respond to them when they write to ask, is that bit of waste ground available for a small housing development for us? At the moment, they get no reply for it many times. I'm not saying that's always the case. There are many very, very good landlords out there, but there are many very poor landlords as well. And I think people should need to register in Europe. European legal entities, I think, should be essential if you're going to buy land in Scotland. And we need to know more details of just who will benefit from that. There's issues in the bill about their community right to buy land for sustainable development. So if a community wants to develop things sustainably, that community should have the right to buy land. But it's not a willy-nilly right that a small group of people can suddenly wake up one morning and decide, I want to buy this field or that field or this forest. They would have to jump through massive hoops. And one of the hoops is that if the current ownership remains in ownership, that there would be significant harm being done to the community. So to prove that significant harm is being done before you can buy, I think it's a huge hurdle. And I wonder if it's maybe not too huge, but it's certainly, if it stays, there's no imminent threat of landowners wakening up and having all the land taken away from them tomorrow. These things need to be looked at sensibly and fairly and decently, and they will. We also have a lot of issues to do with tenant farmers. We take evidence from all over Scotland. We were in Skye, we were in Jura and Islay, we were in Dumfries, we were in the Borders, we were in Fife, speaking to tenant farmers, speaking to landowners. And we heard some pretty sorry stories, I would have to say, from some of the tenants and some of these estates. Particularly what they call Section 91 tenants, who are secure tenants, and some of the things that have gone on which, to be quite frank, make my blood boil. But there you are. And debate over the right to buy a tenancy, where you have a secure tenancy. And there's a difference between having a secure tenancy and just being a tenant under other circumstances. I think, and personally, I think we need the land boil. We need to do something to sort out this festering sore that has been affecting tenanting land and affecting the willingness of landowners to let and people to take lets as well. I think we need to take that head on, but you'll have to wait to Friday to find out what the committee is going to recommend in relation to that. This land reform bill, I think, as I finish, is a start of a process. There's a long way to go. There's a lot in it. Stage 2 discussion will start once we get the government's response after the committee's report is published on Friday. Amendments will no doubt be tabled by government, by individual MSPs and other parties, so it will change over the next few months, and we will hopefully get to a stage round about February, sometime in the new year, certainly before the Parliament goes in, finishes on the 23rd of March, where we will have a new Land Reform Act, which I hope and believe will begin to make a big difference to the people of Scotland. And may the Lord guide us all of that as we move that forward. Thank you.